So last week I asked ChatGPT how to sketch like me, how to sketch like Toby Urban Sketch. In this video we're going to look at what it said and we're going to take those ideas and see are they good. And I'm going to give you my best ideas for how to sketch like me, how to learn and get better at urban sketching. So hi everyone, I'm Toby from Toby's Urban Sketch. Thank you very much for joining me. Now I know this video seems a bit arrogant, doesn't it? Why on earth would you think to ask ChatGPT how to sketch like yourself? Well, I guess it is a bit. Maybe there's an ego problem going on in here. It's a bit like Googling yourself. I just really wanted to see, with all of the negativity around how AI is ruining art, how AI is going to destroy the art landscape for everyone, and nothing's going to be real anymore, as well as the ideas of all these privacy worries. I wanted to know how much ChatGPT really did know about me, and what it came up with is really actually quite interesting. So in this video we're going to analyse the tips it gave me to sketch like me, and I'm going to show you why I agree or why I disagree, and when I disagree I will replace it with what I think the version of that tip should have been. A little bit of self-promotion here. If you really want to learn to sketch like me, then I have got my own in-depth course, sketchloose.co.uk. You can check that out, and just contact me if you've got any questions about it. And there I can show you really how I sketch, how I think about sketching. But without further ado, let's move on to this video. Let me know in the comments what you think of the rules. You can make it more general. It doesn't have to be about sketching like me. What are the most important things for you about how to master, how to develop urban sketching? So forgive me, I'm going to be reading from my phone because what it actually gave me was a blog post. So I've got a whole blog post to understand and talk through with you. I'm also actually just going to put up the blog post as it wrote on my website, with a disclaimer at the top, written by ChatGPT, so no one thinks that this is my actual advice. But for interest, if anyone wants to see what ChatGPT thinks of me, it's up on my website. You just find it on the blogs tab, and I'll put a link down below. So without further ado, the introduction is urban sketching is a unique artistic style. It goes on to say Toby is a renowned urban sketch artist. So we're agreeing so far, aren't we? Again, the ego problem. Who's inspired many to take up this art form. In this blog post, we'll have a look at a detailed tutorial on how to sketch like Toby. So I hope I have inspired some people to take up art. Many people tell me they have. So that, I don't know if it's scraping all my YouTube comments or what, but I don't know that I'm a renowned artist. Some people know me, I guess, is a better way of putting that, and I enjoy what I do. So there you go. Thank you, ChatGPT. Let's move on to the actual advice. So the first thing it tells us is that having the right tools is crucial to mastering urban sketching. And yeah, but no, that's what I'm going to say. It's sort of true, but sort of not. And why do I say that? Look, well, I have my favourite tools, so you can see them here. I've got my lovely little set of watercolours. I've got my favourite Moleskine sketchbook, which is landscape, a little smaller than half letter. And I've got few day pens. I've got a couple of fountain pens. And if you are interested in my supplies, I've got them all my favourite things I've got listed up on my website, urbansketch.co.uk. And if you just go to the supplies tab. But why do I say yeah, but no? Because, actually, urban sketching is not about having the right tools. It's not about having specific things. For me, urban sketching is ink and watercolours, and it's being agile and having limited tools which you can therefore carry anywhere. So I've done some of these sketches indoors and outdoors, but I don't really change my processes wherever I am. But it doesn't have to be these things. As I look around my studio, I find a Pilot pen. I've got a brush pen, another fountain pen. I've got fine liners. I've got bottles of ink. All of these things, pencils, they're all great for urban sketching. And all of these ways of sketching are perfectly valid. So it doesn't have to be the right tools. So instead of the right tools, perhaps we could change that to say, tools that you enjoy, tools that you're comfortable with. And from even just a pencil or a pen and some paper, you'll be able to get out there, start sketching and mastering those basic and fun and interesting sketches. So step number 2, we're told by the brilliant Chat GPT, is to start with basic shapes. It's essential to break down the scene into basic shapes. And I'm going to say, yeah, this is pretty good. It's not essential, but it's a great way to sketch. It's a great way to provide reliable interest to your sketch. And what exactly do I mean? And what exactly do I mean by shapes, and how do we use them? Well, I'm going to link at the bottom of this several different tutorials about shapes. And it's also something I cover in depth in a couple of Skillshares and in my Sketch Loose courses on sketchloose.co.uk. But it's something which is so fundamental, I thought, let's just really quickly in this video also do shapes again. And, you don't need me to tell you what a shape is. A shape is, it's a triangle, it's a square, a circle. Shapes can also be things which we can't quite describe, but we can, just by thinking of it as a shape, some kind of polygon, we can get it on the page. So it could be like some kind of odd trapezoid parallelogram. It could be an ellipse with a wobble. But we don't need to think about this as something clever. This could be a pair of lips, but instead of thinking about it ellipse, we've made it into an ellipse with a wobble. And without having to think about complex shapes, just simplifying terms in our own mind means we can get things on a page. Why is this important? Well, it means you can simplify things really easily. So people suddenly become a circle, a triangle, and a triangle. And dogs become, a circle, maybe a rectangle, and some sticks. Similarly, sheep, very similar to dogs, but you just give them a bigger circle behind, right? So suddenly animals, dogs, cats, people, even bikes are just a triangle, a couple of circles and a sort of stick, and before you know it, you get a person on top, and you got a bike in a really simplified, quick way. But shapes also make things interesting. We could take a really boring scene, and this is actually a scene I used as an example of a boring scene in another tutorial, and actually by just discovering that instead of thinking of it as a sort of boring house, by discovering that this house has got loads of shapes linking it, shapes which are sort of moving off in different directions, shapes which are relating to it in other places. And just by discovering all these shapes, and look, everything here, simple shapes, by discovering these things all as simple shapes, all we need to do is find those shapes, and suddenly this boring, ridiculously boring scene, the back of a house, no windows, nothing, actually, look, I would argue this is already building up to be something rather interesting, something rather fun, which I personally wouldn't have expected and wouldn't have been able to do without thinking in shapes. Now, step number 3 we come to is observe and analyse. So we are told observation is a crucial aspect of urban sketching, essential to keenly observe and analyse the scene, focusing on various details like textures, people and architecture. Now this is a bit vague, isn't it? It's a bit vague, but it's got some hint of truth. So let's talk about the idea of observation and the idea of analysis. So observation is a really crucial skill, of course, in drawing. And a great way of practicing observation is to draw things from in front of you. So a lovely one to do is to sketch your hand. So you can just put your hand out and then just from direct observation, very slowly capture the lines. And instead of now, we're not focusing actually on shapes for this. We are really directly drawing from observation. We're trying to match the lines. And then we can break it down into shapes as well in our head, but it's more about, I know this is counterintuitive to what I often talk about, but this is more about just really slowly observing what's going on. And this is a great skill. And it's a great skill then to combine with what we talked about before, to combine with our shapes. Because when you can analyze it in terms of shapes, and then you can also observe it and carefully and mindfully keep drawing and looking, you'll soon enough capture a really great sketch, a really simple sketch, a really complex sketch. Any kind of sketch relies on, to some degree, observation. But why I'm just going to continue my little hand drawing as I talk here, because this is quite fun actually. But why is it not the be all and end all? Why is it not necessarily true that you need to observe and analyse? Well, because it's not just about, for me, not just about the observation. So it's also about the emotion you're feeling, about the essence of the scene. It's about what's your version of the scene, what's important to you about the scene, and what isn't, and how can you change what's in front of you whilst reflecting all of that. So just as a really silly example, as I finish off my hand sketch, what colour should I paint my hand? Does my hand have to be pink, for example? No, it doesn't at all. And this is where it's a really simple way of just framing. There's observation, but then there's also breaking free and having fun and being yourself. So why not have my hand start off gold over there and then just introduce something totally wrong? Why not have a little bit of green come in to form an element of it here? And yeah, okay, this is not right. I definitely haven't done it from observation. It's not even reflecting the different shadows and things going on. And maybe it's not even the best choice. It's not really representing anything at all in a sense. But in another sense, what's wrong with it? Nothing. I wanted to put this green in. I wanted to explore the textures this lovely cascade green can produce. Or I wanted to examine how the quinacridone gold and the green played together on my page. So that's good enough a reason to do that, to explore and have fun. So yes, observation, analysis, really important, combines very well with those shapes ideas, but also it's not the be all and end all. If something goes wrong in your observation, if you analyze a shape wrong, it really doesn't matter. You're allowed to change things, allowed to have fun, allowed to put your own slant on a scene. So step number 4, apply different techniques. So it says there are lots of different techniques to apply, like hatching, cross-hatching, stippling, and we can use these to express different textures, tones and shapes. And I'm very concerned that Chat GPT has correctly identified that I mainly employ hatching and cross-hatching technique in my sketching. So clearly it is following me. Do I agree with this? Yes, I do. This is a really important step in sketching, and in particularly for me in urban sketching. So let's just talk about those different techniques and just understand what they mean. So this step, what ChatGPT is talking about, really is ink sketching or pencil sketching, or using some kind of drafting implement rather than watercolors. So with these, hatching techniques are literally just where you create an area of your sketch, an area of your page, where it appears darker because you have lots of lines close together. Now the thing is, of course, with ink, you either have white or you have black. So if we actually fill in a square, we only have 2 options, white or black. Hatching allows you to have something which appears to be in the middle. And that's the main reason it's so powerful. But of course it also applies texture. So if we were to do a little wooden wall, a little wooden fence rather, by applying hatching in a sort of loose way, you're not only increasing the darkness, the value of something, you're also applying texture. Similarly with a tree. Now you could hatch with lovely just simple vertical lines, and that applies a sort of unnatural texture and a value or darkness which might be there. But you can also use a variety of ways of hatching to just give a sense of the leaves, a sense of the movement, perhaps a sense of the wind blowing through, whilst also increasing the texture, the tone, the value, all these things we're talking about. Cross-hatching is the same, but what do? Well, instead of just going in one direction and building up value or darkness through that, we go in 2 directions, and that might be 90 degrees, or it might then be another 45 degrees. And this way we get increasingly darker and darker areas. Now this is great as a strict technique for very careful drawing and things, and it's going to apply this texture. The reason I prefer hatching and natural hatching like this is because it allows us to be really flexible and varied with our hatching. The last thing that was mentioned in that little excerpt from ChatGPT is the idea of stippling. Stippling is dots. And similarly, you can just imagine you have some squares, and the more dots you have in that square, the closer you get to dark. Now this is really lovely. Now just look at it. Look how lovely that is. But why don't I do that? Because it takes time. It takes a lot of time. In the time that you could just do that, it takes you, 4 or 5 times as long to get the same effect. And for me, sketching is quick. It's fun and it's free. And I want to move from one thing to another, and I want to get my energy out. I don't want to spend an hour just getting the darkness right on one building through this technique. That said, if you have the patience, if you're not like me and you have the patience for stippling, it's amazing. So please do just enjoy and explore it if that's you. I'm just going to touch briefly as well. I think within this, we may as well just touch briefly on, 2 key watercolor techniques which really help with the idea of texture in particular. Because again, I totally agree. Applying different techniques is really important, and we shouldn't just stick with ink techniques. So what are the 2 techniques? Well, number 1, we've got wet on dry, wet watercolor. So here's my green again, wet on dry, and what we can do is we can get a lovely flat wash. So if we just go down and across, and look how I'm not going back on the wash, we get this nice smooth wash. With wet on dry, the way I tend to do it, so this is a sort of traditional, the right way to do watercolours in many ways. What I like to do actually is more like a scrubbing motion, because I'm trying to get that variation. I don't want that neat wash, I want this. And so, here technique 1 is wet on dry. But don't just think it's only one way of doing this. Just through a simple change in how we use our brush, suddenly we've got a huge change in the texture. Now option 2, of course, key technique number 2 to explore is wet on dry. So if I just pop some water in there in a couple of places, so we've got 2 wet areas of our paper. And now I'll use a different colour actually. No, I'll use the same one so we can compare. That's more sensible, isn't it? So now we can touch our colour in, and we've got this wet on dry, wet on wet, and the colours paint themselves, and we get, again, very different textures, very different feels. Similarly, we don't have to drop in. We can actually come and we can paint in there like we did before, and again, we get very different textures. So again, very simple ways that we've just changed how we are using our colours. We changed a really simple part about how we're using our brush. Still using the same things, we've got dramatically different areas of paper. So that was a bit of a long one, but absolutely I agree. As we're told, that applying different techniques is really important to mastering, quote unquote, urban sketching. So there you go. The conclusion is, by following this step-by-step guide, you can master urban sketching like Toby. No, I have not mastered urban sketching, for reference. I'm having fun and I have my style and I'm confident in it, but it's not perfect and I haven't mastered anything. And I just want to enjoy myself and remove that perfectionist tendency that absorbs into the rest of my life. However, remember to develop your remember to develop your unique style by experimenting with different techniques, materials and approaches. With time, you can create beautiful sketches and capture the spirit and essence of the cityscape with much ease. Now, I think that's a really nice ending. That Chat GPT has won me over. Actually, I think that does capture what I hope people would like to do: to experiment, explore, to develop your style. Not to feel you have to. No problems with people copying me or learning or trying to replicate elements of my style, but also be you. So if your style is my style, great. If your style is similar or completely different to my style, be confident in being you. Be confident in disagreeing or not liking stuff that I produce, because that's fine. We're all different, and as long as I'm enjoying what I'm doing, I'm happy. As long as you're enjoying what you're doing, I'm even happier. So with that note, thank you very much everyone for watching this slightly different video. Thank you Chat GPT for providing me with this amazing content and happy sketching. So thank you everyone for watching my little sketching videos. If you enjoy my content, please do subscribe to my channel because it makes me really, really happy. Thanks again.